greatest unsolved mystery in the Chicago area would have to be the Grimes sisters. The questions we still ask is who killed them and what happened between the time they were missing and when their bodies were found on German Church Road. This crime was one to shatter the innocence of Chicago forever. It was December 28, 1956, and Patricia, 13, and Barbara, 15, left their home on Damon Avenue and headed to the Brighton Theater just 1 mile away. The girls were both die-hard fans of Elvis Presley and went to see his film Love Me Tender for the 11th and, of course, last time ever. The girls were seen in the concession line at 9:30. Then seen on Archer Avenue bus at 11 p.m. After that, things get weird. This may be the actual last time they were seen alive. The girls were missing for the next 25 days before they were found naked along a bank frozen in Devil's Creek in Cook County, Illinois. The girls' mother expected them by 11:45 p.m., but started to worry at 11:30 when they had not returned. She sent their brother and sister to the bus stop to watch for them. After 3 buses came and went, they returned home. They never saw their sisters again, but others say they did. Classmates claim to see them at Angelo's restaurant 24 hours after the disappearance. Also, a railroad conductor seen them on a train. A security guard says he offered them directions on the 29th. Hours after they disappeared on January 1st, both girls were identified as passengers on a CTA bus on Damon Avenue. The next week, they were reported in Inglewood at Unity Hotel. Then 3 employees at Crest seen the girls listening to Elvis in the record store. This caused the police to decide the girls ran away, but Loretta refused to believe her girls ran away. Therefore, it became the greatest missing persons hunt in Chicago police history. Even Elvis made a public service announcement and asked the girls to be good girls. Go home, ease your mother's worries. This plea was unanswered. Who knows if they were even still alive to hear the plea? There were a series of letters that were later discovered to have came from a mental patient. Took Mrs. Grimes to Milwaukee on January 12th. She was escorted by FBI agents and instructed to sit in a downtown Catholic church with $1,000 on the bench beside her. The letters said Barbara Grimes would walk in and retrieve the money and then leave to deliver it to the kidnapper. She and her sister would then be released. But no one ever came. Mrs. Grimes sat there for hours contemplating her daughter's fate. They say by this time the bodies of the 2 girls were most likely already lying along German Church Road in a ditch covered in snow. But if this is so, how on January 14th, Wallace and Ann Towston's daughter Sandra, who happened to be a classmate of Patricia, received 2 calls around midnight. The first call woke Wallace out of his sleep, but the caller said nothing. The second call, Ann answered. The voice said, "Is that you, Sandra? Is Sandra there?" But before she could give Sandra the phone, the caller hung up. Ann was convinced the voice belonged to Patricia. That wasn't the only strange calls happening. There was a man who called 911 and would not identify himself, but insisted the girls' bodies would be found in the park at 81st and Wolf. He claimed it came to him in a dream. The police traced the call to Walter Cravens, a 53-year-old steamfitter. He was taken into custody on January 22nd, when the bodies were discovered 1 mile from the park Crayon Strap Road. He became one of the numerous people questioned by police in the weeks. Leonard Preslott was driving south on German Church Road in Willow Springs when he spotted what appeared to be 2 discarded clothing store mannequins lying next to a guardrail a short distance from the road. A few feet away, the ground dropped off to Devil's Creek. Unsure of what he had seen, he brought his wife to the spot, and they drove to the police station. His wife was so upset by what she had seen, she had to be carried back to her car. After investigators realized that they were actually bodies and identified them as the Grimes sisters, Barbara lay on her left side with her legs drawn up toward her body. Her head was covered by her sister's body, whose head had been turned sharply to the right. The official says the bodies have been laying there as early January night. Because of the cold weather and snow, the bodies were preserved. The investigators and the press began to find a connection between the girls and the killing of the 3 boys who had been found in a similar circumstance in October 1955. The horror felt by parents in Chicagoland was only compounded by the disappearance of the Grimes sisters and the way they were found. Like the 3 boys, they were both found naked, dumped in secluded wooded areas, and still unsolved at this time. After the discovery of the bodies, 162 officers from Chicago started searching the woods, trampling whatever evidence there was. Between officers, reporters, medical examiners, and everyone else, the investigation was contaminated. The bodies were taken to Cook County Morgue, where they would be stored till autopsy was possible. The bodies had nodding bruises and marks. They haven't been explained to this day. Newspapers reported that there were 3 ugly wounds in Patricia's abdomen, and left side of her face had been battered, possibly a broken nose. Barbara's face was also bruised. There were punctures from an ice pick in her chest. Once the bodies were removed from the crime scene, investigators searched and couldn't find any clothing or evidence. Once the autopsies were performed the following day, they were hoping a lead would come. There were 3 pathologists and they couldn't agree on a cause of death, so they stated the girls died from shock and exposure, and they died on December 28th, the night they disappeared. Barbara and Patricia were buried on January 28th, 1 month after they disappeared. A number of suspects were seriously considered. The first, Walter Krantz, the dreamer. He was interrogated and given a lie detector test. No solid evidence was found. Then there was the Tennessee drifter, Edward Benny Bedwell. He looked like Elvis and had been seen with the girls. He was initially questioned. He admitted to being at the restaurant with a friend and 2 girls, but they were not the Grimes sisters. He later admitted and then he recanted his confession was most likely beaten out of him. He was later arrested in Florida for the rape of a 13-year-old girl, which closely resembled the Grimes sisters, which he managed to avoid a conviction for. The coroner announced publicly that Barbara and Patricia could not have died in the night they disappeared. He also raised questions about bruises and wounds on the bodies. He was sure the girls were treated violently prior to death, and Barbara was sexually molested before she was killed. They were very upset this information was released. They wanted to keep it a secret when questioning suspects. He was fired shortly after this for compromising cases, but the sheriff remained by his side and agreed the girls had likely been beaten, tortured, and raped by a predator that led them to his car under innocent pretense. The sheriff was convinced that Benny Bedwell was guilty until his death in 1969. Other theories are that the girls may have encountered Bedwell or another older man. Rumor was the 2 girls hung out at a bar on Archer Avenue, where men would buy them drinks. Today, veteran detectives believe there is way more to the story. Some are convinced that they were taken by the leader of a gang into sex trafficking and were taken into the woods after refusing to become prostitutes. Some remain angry about this theory still to this day. They say Barbara and Patricia were nice, ordinary, happy girls and were tragically killed on a cold night because they got in a car with a stranger. They didn't hang out in bars for say. There aren't many stories as tragic as the demise of the Grimes sisters, but it brings us peace for us to believe that their deaths were a dramatic mistake by an evil person. Years past, the crime still hasn't been solved. Although there is no statute of limitations on murder, the case stayed open. Loretta Grimes passed away in December 1989, a tragic and broken woman. Then decades later, there was hope for the case when the Peterson boys' murders were solved. But all the connections to the Grimes they thought they had was totally wrong. Here it is 40 years later, and the mystery who killed the Grimes sisters still remains unsolved. The impact of this tragedy is still being felt today. A short distance from the site the sisters was found, there was a home back in the woods. The entrance was blocked with a chain. It mysteriously was abandoned by the family who lived there shortly after the girls' bodies were found. At some point, vandals set fire to a house, and the owner had to demolish it. Some people say the house was haunted due to the girls being dumped so close. Since the discovery of the bodies, the police have received reports about a car pulling up to a location, heard a car door open and something dumped the car, door slams and drives away. It seems the traumatic final moments of the Grimes sisters left such an impression on this small stretch of German Church Road that it has a residual haunting there. There are multiple suspects but never any solid clues to who took the girls. Loretta Grimes died not even knowing who took her babies. 61 years later, no clues. Before passing away, Mrs. Grimes received multiple ransom letters and phone calls of people claiming to have her daughter. There were all sorts of stories, but the one that makes sense is the girls were seen getting in a car with a couple men after the movies. There were even a few calls, people claiming they knew how the girls died. The police tracked all information on calls and letters. They appeared fabricated except for one caller. Mrs. Grimes believed actually knew what happened after the bodies were found. She received a call from a man who gave details about the girls that wasn't released or published at the time. I know something about your little girl no one else knows, not even the police. The smallest girl's toes were crossed at the feet. The caller laughed and hung up the phone. There was no way to identify the caller. About a year later, after the Grimes sister was killed, a 15-year-old girl named Bonnie Scott was murdered in another part of Illinois. After this murder, Mrs. Grimes received another call from the same man who bragged about killing her girls. He bragged about killing the girls and killing Scott. The man had a very distinct voice. This time he said, "I've committed another perfect crime. This is another one the cops won't solve." There were multiple suspects, but not enough evidence to hold them in. As for Charles Melquist, he was charged with the murder of Scott, but never the Grimes sisters. He died in 2010. The question is, was it Charles or was it Benny? Was Benny lying about the two girls he was with? They both make sense. Benny says his friend and two different girls was at the restaurant, and the story said the girls got in a car with two guys. But Charles committed a murder on Bonnie Scott identical to the Grimes sisters' murders. What do you think? 62 years ago today, two sisters went to the movies and never came home, and their murder is still unsolved. They deserve peace. Rest in heaven to Barbara and Patricia Grimes. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Chicago Haunts videos. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, leave me a comment.